Nini. Hello and welcome back to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. A couple of weeks ago, I went to the Arkansas Pagan Pride Day in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I'm wearing their button. Here, let me give you a close-up. Woohoo! Despite sweating to death for half the day, then dripping to death the other half because a tropical system stalled out over us, in spite of those things, I had a wonderful time. I met some new friends, met some old friends that I hadn't seen in forever, and I even met a longtime viewer of this show, so yay! So today I figured I would tell you a little bit more about Pagan Pride. What is it, and why is it relevant to us? So let's begin. As you might guess, the idea of Pagan Pride was inspired by the gay pride movement that began in the late 60s to early 70s. And just as events like the Stonewall riots in the 60s inspired, the gay pride movement, my personal take is that the Satanic Panic of the 1980s had something to do with the formation of the Pagan Pride movement. Those of you who are also old enough to remember this, there was a lot of Red Scare level hysteria going on in the 1980s, only it was about, who was satanic. Everything from Dungeons and Dragons to Procter & Gamble. They make toothpaste and household products. All of these folks were implicated as being satanic. And, of course, caught up in all of that was anyone that was Wiccan or, something not, plain Jane Americana. So, nobody's really sure exactly when Pagan Pride started, but the first event is said to have taken place in 1992. So this would have been a few years after the height of the Satanic Panic. A lot of interesting things happened in 1992, but over the 90s the movement kind of picked up steam. In the late 90s you had the Pagan Pride Project start, and you can still find their website. And, over time, there got to be more events going on in different places, not just in the United States, but also, or North America. You had things going on in Canada, but also Europe, South America, and other places as well. So, it's grown from there. 2007 was the first time I ever went to a Pagan Pride Day event in my area. Major themes that you have at these kind of events include community charity. Will collect donations for food banks and things like that. There were groups in New York that collected things, to help after 9/11. There were groups that helped for things after Katrina. So that's an important thing that they do. But also, of course, educating the public, because just as the gay pride movement, seeks to overcome the stigma and misconceptions that people have about the LGBTQ community, Pagan Pride seeks to overcome the stigma and the prejudices that people have against those that practice various forms of paganism. And usually Pagan Pride events are held around the fall equinox, so, September, October. Obviously, if you live in the southern hemisphere, that would be the spring equinox, but there are some exceptions, though, because the first Pagan Pride event that I went to was in mid-August, and I baked for that one, too. Especially because I didn't have a nice tent, so I got a little bit of a tan while I was out there with my booth. But, so you might have some early birds in the late August range, but generally September to, early October. So this is the time of year when Pagan Pride events might be going on in your area. But why would this matter to those of us who are Egyptian Pagan And when I say that, I'm covering people who might consider themselves Tamarind Wiccan or, eclectic or something like that, or people who consider themselves specifically Kemetic. And a lot of folks that are Kemetic don't feel very comfortable with the term pagan. They feel that that doesn't really describe what we do. And so why would pagan pride still be relevant to you? One very important reason. Other pagans need to know who we are. They need to know what we do. And if we keep to ourselves in our little tracks that you have on the internet, the little, social media groups or the YouTube channels like this one, and don't go beyond that, then how will anyone else know what we do, especially when they try to talk about what's in the area or explain to newcomers, about the different faiths that are out there. If they don't know, then, how are they going to be able to explain it? Also, if you don't go and engage with people in your community, you might be missing someone else who is an Egyptian pagan or Kemetic that has been there the whole time and you don't know it because, you've just been following the people that you know and not, venturing out. I found out that there was a viewer of my channel who lives in the Hot Springs area, so I would never have known had I not gone. Another thing to consider with going to actual events is you could get inspiration by meeting other pagans and seeing other things that are out there that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Here's a very important thing to consider. When I went to my first Pagan Pride event in 2007, that's what inspired me to write Following the Sun. Because I realized there was so much interest out there and not enough books that really explained it to, a beginner. That's just one example. You could go to an event and see something that inspires you to go on and do something else. So that's another, source. A lot of things, songs and things that you can find on YouTube now actually started at pagan festivals back in the 80s and then in the 90s. So that's another important reason, to have these kind of events. But my college friend, who was at Arkansas Pagan Pride, she gave a presentation, and she also does a podcast, and it's called Yet Another Pagan Podcast, and I'm definitely going to be checking that out later. But she had something very important to say, and I wanted to pass this on to you. She said, "Don't let the internet be your paganism." For us who are Kemetics especially, that's very relevant because so much of what we do is on the internet. Right now there are not a whole lot of us compared to, say, heathens and Wiccans and, other forms of mainstream paganism. We're still more of a minority. I know what it's like, too, to be, the only person of an Egyptian persuasion, in your pagan community. I've been that way for 10 years. So, believe me, I know the feeling. But if you don't go out there and meet other people, then, you're only going to continue to be lonely. I found out that another schoolmate of mine, that I've, been in touch with for the last 10 years now, he's a Roman Reconstructionist. So we at least have a little bit of overlap there. We're both interested in pagan Reconstruction faiths. And so he's come over to support events of mine, and then he did an Idus ritual, with us one time. So, there's ways that you can share that you wouldn't have if you didn't go out and meet other people face to face. So, another thing to consider, especially for those of us who are Kemetic, how many of us have just that one, set of blogs that we follow, or, a few pages on Tumblr, or House of Nature guest forums, and that's mainly where you go and do your Kemetic thing. If you took that away, what would you have? So, that's where real life connections are very important. So, look and see if there are any pagan pride events or any pagan festivals going on in your area. If there's not, another thing you can look for is something called Pagan Night Out. And we have one of those in our area. My husband likes to call it the Pagan Pizza Party because we always hold it at a local pizza place. And the reason behind that is so that you can meet other pagans in a safe public venue and get to know them and feel them out before going, say, to somebody's house to find out more about their coven. Because that's, that can potentially be a dangerous situation, or at least, something where you can kind of get swept up into things you don't really want to be in. So that's why they have Pagan Night Out. And that's something that, if they don't have that in your area, it's fairly easy to start. You just go and that's where the internet can actually help the real world. You can go and post, on local events and social media, or even someplace like Witchbox. Some people I've heard have been like, Witchbox, but that's how I found out about Arkansas Pagan Pride. So it's I find it to be a fairly useful resource every now and then to go on Witchbox and look for something. But it's not the only one, but that's something that you can do, because you never know. Even though there aren't any other dedicated Egyptian pagans in my area, I've had other people come and do rituals, and we learned a lot of really interesting things by doing that. And sometimes by trying to present what you do to an outsider who's pagan but not into the same thing, it can give you a lot of insight. And it certainly has for me. So, it really helps, especially if you want to be able to explain your faith to somebody. It helps to be able to start with people who are at least familiar with paganism, and through, some other tradition. So that's why things like Pagan Pride Day and, pagan festivals, things like that, are important even to us as Kemetics. I really think that we should be going to these kinds of things and making our presence known more. Yes, I know there's PantheaCon in California, and that's, a lot of the Reconstructionists and, the Kemetic Orthodox, they go to that. But the rest of us, rank and file, we need to go to our own events, in our area and let people know, hey, we're here. We're part of the pagan fabric, whether that's what we consider ourselves or not. There are others who do put us under that umbrella, so we need to at least let them know, hey, this is what we are. So, speaking of Roman Reconstructionism, I know there was someone else who was a Roman Recon that asked for a lustration ritual. That's coming up in another video. I'm working on reading a book, and I'm going to have some more books sent to me soon. Shout out to Kemetic Witchcraft. So, I'm looking forward to doing more videos on things like that. Good things are afoot. And since it's that time of year, I want to wish those of you who celebrate it a happy Mabon, or fall equinox. And we'll get some more things going. So, and real quick, one other thing. It's that time of year. Halloween is coming. And if you're like me, you've noticed that in the stores, they have not just the Halloween stuff, but some places have all sorts of things that say, Happy Fall, or even Happy Harvest. Gee, that sounds even more pagan than Happy Halloween, if you know what I'm talking about. So, if you kind of feel that way, I invite you to come on over to my Etsy store or my Zazzle store and look for this button. It says, and I think the camera's actually reading it backwards, I'm not sure, but it says, I'll say Merry Christmas if you'll say Happy Halloween. It's something that as soon as the weather gets cool, I put that on my jacket, and that's what I wear. Because, hey, what's wrong with saying Happy Halloween? You expect us to say Merry Christmas, but won't give us something in return? And yes, I know that for a lot of Wiccans and other mainstream pagans, it's Samhain, not Halloween. But hey, all the more reason that it should be okay to say Happy Halloween. That's my 2 cents. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you Senepti. Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on lulu.com, shop handmade pagan supplies in my Etsy store, and get your official Kemetic Independent gear on Zazzle. Go ahead and hit pause for the links. You can even rewind and watch this video again.